Hi, I'm Reed Peterson, and welcome to Grief Refuge. It warms my heart to know that you're here listening today, for you see, Grief Refuge is a very unique podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Grief Refuge is about helping you find peace and purpose after loss. This podcast is about validating your grief-related thoughts and feelings, taking time to reflect, and honoring your self-care. At Grief Refuge, you will learn healthy ways to manage grief. You will also feel comforted, hopeful, and a sense of peace in regards to your loss and life moving forward. Through the stories and conversations shared on this podcast, my intention is to provide companionship, insight, and a soothing voice to help you navigate the darker feelings that grief brings up. Grief is hard. I'm glad you're here, and I promise to do everything I can to provide the best support to you. Before we go deeper into today's topic, let's go over a little housekeeping. Because of the depth and the nature of this topic, it may be more beneficial to not multitask while listening. Rather, I invite you to use this time for your self-care and personal reflection. Use this time to relax and allow your grief-related feelings to run their course. Use this time to mourn your loss. Also, this podcast publishes episodes twice a month. When you're grieving, that's a lot of time in between each episode. If you need more support, download the Grief Refuge app. The Grief Refuge app provides daily support to help soothe and comfort you throughout this difficult journey. You can get the Grief Refuge app from the App Store that's sitting on your smartphone. Thank you, and let's move on to today's topic. Today, when many people are focused on resolutions and making their life that much greater, I honor you and your journey through making grief more manageable. Today I'm sharing my thoughts about setting goals for grief and loss. Please enjoy. Most of the time in life, as well as in the act of doing and growing, it's helpful to have goals. Goals that help track where you want to go and how to grow. Goals that are even called SMART goals, which is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Some people who coach others through grief may try to set goals, whether they are simple goals to make it through the day or SMART goals to help people recognize their obstacles, their benchmarks, and track progress to see how far they've come along. There's nothing wrong with trying something like that, but many people that are impacted by grief say that SMART goals don't work so well. They feel so much pressure to move on too quickly. They also feel like their emotions are time-stamped. And after 6 months or so, they're in the wrong if they continue to feel sadness, depression, or despair. Have you set goals throughout your grief process? If right now your answer is no, please don't worry about any thought that you need to, or that you'd be better off if you have goals to help you get through grief. If your answer is yes, what comes up for you in the efforts to attain success in meeting these goals? Does this process feel comforting and supportive? Does it feel authentic or helpful? Grief is an all-encompassing experience, and if you set goals but don't achieve them, how will you end up treating yourself? Will you get down on yourself and add more hardship to your already difficult loss-related thoughts and feelings? Or will you let yourself off the hook, reevaluate, and set a new or simpler goal? Your answers to questions like these can help you determine if setting goals in your grief is a good idea or if it's not. Most people that are grieving really want to keep things simple. The thought of setting goals might feel daunting, or it might feel overwhelming. Trust yourself in determining if grief-related goals are a good thing for you or not. Trust your heart and trust your soul in making such a decision. Your grief process is unique, and the last thing you want to do is put more pressure on yourself, or feel overwhelmed, or even feel stuck in your grief. Hopefully by now, you have some clarity about where you stand with setting goals in grief. If you are looking to set some grief-related goals, I'm going to provide 3 tips. If goals for grief just don't resonate right now, after I share the tips, I'm going to share an alternative to setting goals that could be of great help throughout your grieving process. In general, setting goals can imply that there's an end in sight. When it comes to grief, the end is commonly thought of as getting through it or moving on. And another common one would be just simply feeling better. If grief and feeling better had a linear progression throughout the process, it would be much easier to achieve goals such as these. Unfortunately, grief doesn't work that way. Nobody can progress through grief in a linear way. But if you feel lost and you need some goals to get you on track, there are a few things that you can focus on to help manage grief and live more harmoniously between the pain of it and the everyday experience in life moving forward. The first grief goal is to create a sanctuary. When you're grieving, a special place within your surroundings can be used to help process grief. This place can be an area within a room of your home. It could be the whole room itself. It could be somewhere outside. It could be inside your car. Or it could be somewhere within your community, like a favorite park, or even at a landmark that's a bit of a distance away from where you live. You don't want it too far away from you, though. It needs to be close enough so that you make time to go there. Ideally, it's of most benefit from spending time there when grief feels really raw. As you process grief and it begins to soften a bit, you'll likely not need to spend as much time in your sanctuary. At the sanctuary, how you decorate it is up to you. Depending on where you are, you can set out objects that remind you of your special loved one and that can help you feel through the emotions that come up. The point of creating a sanctuary is to spend time there, to mourn your loss, and also have some boundaries in place so that your mind can start adapting to the life moving forward outside of the sanctuary. Essentially, you're dosing your grief. It's a focused time to grieve and to mourn. And it also has its limits. You can set a time limit for how long you want to spend in your sanctuary each day. There's a really good book titled Honoring Grief, Creating a Space to Let Yourself Heal. And the book lists in detailed fashion how to create a sanctuary for your grief and your healing. Within the sanctuary, there is sacred time to process grief. Outside of the sanctuary, life can continue. You don't have to suppress, nor do you have to ignore any waves of grief that hit you outside of the sanctuary. But you can also take a mental note to return to it at another time, or you can take a brief moment to let yourself feel whatever comes up. The second grief goal is to make a list of what you want in the year ahead. If you're able to, spend some time at a cafe in your community and make a list of 5 things you want in the year ahead. Try to make this list exclusive from your grief. I know that you want to feel better, and you want the pain and hurt of grief to go away. But if all of your goals are focused on grief itself, you may be setting your mind up to focusing more on the pain of your loss. I understand that in times of grief, it may be difficult to know what you want. And I also understand that you may want something to honor the legacy of your loved one. Any goal, whether small or big, simple or complicated, it's okay to list. This is about your life and what you want. It's important to keep your list to 5 goals or less. In grief, less is more. Keeping things simple is more effective. Grief can overwhelm so easily, so keeping a list of goals to 5 or less helps you stay focused and also more relaxed about it. Making a list of 5 life-focused goals can help sustain some balance in your grieving process. You may feel a sense of normalcy at times, a new normal. And whether that's in your sanctuary grieving or standing in front of your refrigerator and looking over your list of life goals. The third grief goal is to schedule time to rest. Grief has the ability to make you feel more fatigued. Rest and self-care are critically important throughout the grieving process. Similar to setting aside time to spend in your sanctuary, you will also benefit from scheduling time to rest. It's easy to think that the more you keep yourself busy, the less the grief will hurt. That can have some truth at times, but more often, it's a coping mechanism that can lead to greater emotional discomfort in your future. If you think that resting won't do you any good because your mind will then think about only your loss, try to look for a companion to help you make time for restful activities. Movie night is a great example of such an activity. Finding a friend to watch a silly comedy, it can be restful and restorative to your health and to feeling a sense of joy. There are also nature walks, baths, naps, getting massages, stretching, mindful breathing, and listening to music. There are plenty more things to do to help you feel rested. Hopefully, the short list just mentioned here can get you started to doing something to help you feel rested and to care for yourself. There are many more goals you can set to help process grief. It doesn't guarantee you will move through grief quicker, but it does guarantee that there's more awareness and attention to your grief, which can help aid in the healing process. As with other goals in life, grief-related goals don't have to be concrete, and they don't have to be judged as either a success or a failure. They can be adjusted, adapted, and even replaced when they no longer feel important, necessary, or relevant. Grief is an exhausting yet powerful force that can change the outlook of goals over even a short period of time. Remain flexible and open-minded if you choose to set goals for your grief. But if goals for grief and loss don't work for you right now, there's an alternative that may help. It's setting daily intentions. Intentions are different from goals, and that being intentional allows you to focus on how you want to be in the moment, independent of some kind of completion of a goal. Intentions can be set based upon your values and what matters most to you. In grief, the moment is valuable. Being in the moment can help you handle all the emotions that come up. Intentions are focused on the present moment, where goals are focused more on the future. Also, intentions are lived each day. There's less pressure to achieve something grand, as often is the case when you set a goal. In grief, if the goal were to feel better, and then 3 months from now you actually feel worse, it can be so easy to criticize yourself, to feel guilty, and also judge yourself for feeling like that you're stuck and that you're not grieving right. Like I said before, grief isn't a linear experience. It may be more helpful to set intentions. It can help to eliminate self-judgment and criticism that may come from the belief that you're not grieving right. Setting intentions may better serve you when you're grieving because intentions are more internal. They're based on your relationship to yourself and to others. Goals are based on external achievements. Intentions are naturally more self-compassionate, forgiving, nurturing, and supportive. When grieving, it may be a challenge to come up with intentions that feel supportive and helpful. Your brain may be foggy, and it may be hard to remember, plan, and make clear decisions. Some examples of intentions for your grief include setting boundaries, reaching out for help when needed, treating yourself and others with kindness, staying honest, and forgiving yourself, as well as forgiving others. As you think about your grief and what you want in your life, please keep in mind that intentions work better when they remain loose and when they remain flexible. The last thing you want to do is to place an expectation on yourself. There's so much change that happens as a result of loss. There's also transformation. If any of your intentions turn into expectations, you may feel disappointed in yourself when they aren't met. Do your best to adjust the sails when grief forces more change. And one way to ensure that is by keeping an intention an intention. Hopefully, you now have some clarity about whether focusing on some goals or setting intentions for your grief would be of most help to you. Regardless of what you choose, kindness and compassion for yourself are critical elements to your growth, your healing, and even your perception of feeling better and getting through your grief. If you set goals for your grief, try to keep them simple. If you set intentions, stay loose and stay flexible. Navigating grief is a process of surrendering to the moment and honoring your own thoughts and feelings. Avoid any pressure that's either self-induced or from outside sources. Trust the process and honor its timing. Thank you so much for your time and your attention regarding this important topic. I'm also deeply grateful for your trust in Grief Refuge and our mission. We help the grieving find peace and purpose after loss. This is important work, and although painful at times, it is worth your time and your attention for healing your heart, your mind, and soul. You can get more stories, more reflections, more insights, and more grief support on the Grief Refuge app, which I hope you go grab from your phone's app store now. Thank you. Take care. Keep honoring your grief. Be kind to yourself, and talk to you soon.